Johnny Depp was born on June 9, 1963 in Owensboro, Kentucky. He was the youngest of 4 children in a family that moved often. By the time he was a teenager, the family had relocated to Miramar, Florida. His childhood was not easy. His parents argued regularly, and the home environment was unstable. Depp has spoken in interviews about feeling like an outsider from an early age, someone who never quite fit in at school or in his neighborhood. To cope, he turned to music. At around 12 years old, his mother bought him a guitar. He practiced constantly and eventually formed several garage bands during his teen years. He dropped out of Miramar High School at 16 to pursue music full-time. He tried to go back and re-enroll, but his principal reportedly told him to follow his dream. Whether that story is exact or not, Depp left school and did not return. His first band, The Kids, had modest local success in Florida. The group eventually moved to Los Angeles in the early 1980s, hoping to make it in the music industry. They played clubs, worked part-time jobs, and struggled to get noticed. Depp was making very little money. He worked as a telemarketer for a period, selling ballpoint pens over the phone. The music career was not moving forward the way he had hoped. During this time, Depp married Lori Ann Allison in 1983. She was 5 years older than him. The marriage only lasted 2 years, but it changed his life in one significant way. Through Lori, he was introduced to actor Nicolas Cage. Cage saw something in Depp and encouraged him to try acting. He connected Depp with his own agent. This small introduction set everything else in motion. Depp's first film role came in Wes Craven's 1984 horror film A Nightmare on Elm Street. He played Glenn Lance, a teenager who is killed in one of the film's most memorable scenes. It was a small role, but it was a start. After the film, Depp continued to take on small parts and auditions. Acting was not something he had planned, but it quickly became his primary focus. By the mid-1980s, his life as a musician in a struggling band was largely behind him. What stands out about this period is how ordinary it was. Depp was a kid from a broken home, no diploma, no clear plan, who stumbled into acting through a personal connection. The image of a troubled, artistic genius came later. Before that, he was a young man trying to find steady work. In 1987, Johnny Depp was cast as Officer Tom Hansen in the television series 21 Jump Street. The show was about young-looking police officers going undercover in high schools. It was an immediate hit. Depp became a household name almost overnight, particularly among teenagers. His face was on magazine covers and bedroom walls across the country. He was 23 years old. By all accounts, Depp hated it. He found the character shallow, the scripts repetitive, and the celebrity attention suffocating. He spoke openly in interviews about wanting to be taken seriously as an actor, not just as a face on a poster. He reportedly tried to get his character killed off multiple times to escape the contract. The producers kept him alive. He was locked in for 4 seasons. The tension between who he was and who the public wanted him to be became a defining issue in his life. He was not interested in the roles that came naturally with his looks, the romantic lead, the action hero. He wanted to work with directors who were doing something different. That desire led him to Tim Burton. In 1990, Depp starred in Edward Scissorhands. The film was a turning point. He played a character with scissors for hands who is childlike, isolated, and misunderstood. There was almost no dialogue. He communicated entirely through physical expression. It worked. Critics took notice. Depp had proven he could carry a film in a way that had nothing to do with traditional leading man appeal. Fame had already begun to affect him in ways that were harder to see at the time. He was drinking more. He was in relationships that attracted constant media coverage, most notably his engagement to actress Winona Ryder, whom he met in 1989. He tattooed Winona Forever on his arm. When they broke up in 1993, he had it changed to Wino Forever. It became a joke, but it also pointed to a pattern: intense relationships that burned fast and ended badly. He was also spending money at a rate that made little sense for someone who later claimed financial ruin. Reports from people who worked with him during this period describe a man who was generous to the point of recklessness, picking up tabs for strangers, paying for friends' expenses, buying properties on impulse. He was not managing his life, he was reacting to it. By the early 1990s, Depp was one of the most recognizable actors in Hollywood. He was also spending a lot of his time in a very specific world: bars, late nights, and a social circle built around excess. In 1993, he became a co-owner of the Viper Room, a nightclub on Sunset Strip in West Hollywood. The club became a popular spot for musicians and celebrities. On October 31, 1993, actor River Phoenix collapsed outside the Viper Room and died. He was 23 years old. The cause was acute multiple drug intoxication. Depp was not responsible for what happened, but his club was now permanently associated with Phoenix's death. The incident put a spotlight on the environment. Depp was part of a world where heavy drug and alcohol use was normal. Depp has never been shy about acknowledging his own substance use during this period. He has talked about drinking heavily, using various drugs, and living without much structure. He described some of this in later legal proceedings in detail. The picture that emerged was of someone who had been using substances regularly since his teens and whose use increased sharply as his income and access grew. In 1994, Depp was arrested at the Mark Hotel in New York City after causing significant damage to his room. Furniture was broken, items were thrown. He told police he had a problem with a damn armadillo. The charges were settled. The story made headlines but was largely treated as a punchline, the eccentric actor doing eccentric things. At the time, the more serious implications were not examined closely. His film work during this period was actually quite strong. He made What's Eating Gilbert Grape in 1993, Ed Wood in 1994, and Dead Man in 1995. These were serious, demanding roles. He worked with directors like Tim Burton, Jim Jarmusch, and Lasse Hallström. The professional side of his life was functioning well. The personal side was not. The gap between his public image as a serious artistic figure and the reality of his private behavior was growing. People around him enabled the behavior because he was generating significant income, and because the culture around celebrity in the 1990s was not particularly concerned with the mental health or stability of famous people. If you were making movies that sold tickets, questions about how you were actually doing tended not to get asked. Johnny Depp's romantic history is long and in several cases ended badly. Looking at it as a whole, a pattern emerges that goes beyond simple bad luck. After Winona Ryder, he dated supermodel Kate Moss from 1994 to 1998. The relationship was high profile. Both were at the peak of their respective careers during that time. By most accounts, it ended mutually, though Moss later said in testimony during Depp's 2022 defamation trial that he had never pushed her down a flight of stairs, something that had been alleged. She was defending him. The relationship's internal dynamics were not well documented publicly. After Moss, Depp was in a relationship with French actress and singer Vanessa Paradis for 14 years, from 1998 to 2012. They were not married but had 2 children together, Lily Rose, born in 1999, and Jack, born in 2002. This was the most stable period of his personal life on record. They lived primarily in France. He was away frequently for films, but by most accounts he was a present and engaged father. When that relationship ended in 2012, Depp met actress Amber Heard on the set of The Rum Diary. They married in February 2015. The marriage lasted 15 months before Heard filed for divorce in May 2016 and sought a temporary restraining order, claiming domestic violence. What followed became one of the most publicly documented and debated relationship breakdowns in recent entertainment history. Both sides made serious allegations. Both sides produced witnesses, recordings, photographs, and written communications. In 2020, Depp sued the Sun newspaper in the UK for calling him a wife-beater. He lost. The judge found that the description was substantially true based on evidence presented. In 2022, Depp sued Heard in Virginia over a 2018 Washington Post op-ed she wrote describing herself as a survivor of domestic abuse. That trial was broadcast live and watched by millions. The jury found largely in Depp's favor and awarded him significant damages, though Heard was also awarded a smaller amount on a counterclaim. The trials revealed extensive evidence of a deeply dysfunctional relationship. Audio recordings played in court captured both parties saying things that were harmful and at times hard to hear. The recordings did not fit a simple narrative of one pure victim and one clear abuser. Both people appeared to have behaved badly. What stood out most clearly was that Depp's substance use was extensive and that it had direct effects on his behavior in the relationship. Johnny Depp earned extraordinary sums of money over the course of his career. His role as Captain Jack Sparrow in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise alone generated hundreds of millions of dollars for Disney. At his peak, he was one of the highest-paid actors in the world. In 2017, Depp sued his former business managers, the Management Group, alleging that they had mismanaged his finances and allowed him to fall into debt. TMG countersued, claiming that Depp had been warned repeatedly about his spending and had refused to listen. The financial details that came out during this legal dispute were striking. Depp was reportedly spending around $2 million per month. He owned 14 residences. He had a yacht. He employed a large staff. He spent significant sums on wine, reportedly up to $30,000 a month. He paid to have a private island in the Bahamas. He spent heavily on memorabilia, artwork, and cars. He also loaned and gave money to friends and family members in large amounts, sometimes with no clear repayment structure. He funded a film about Hunter S. Thompson, a writer he had long admired, largely out of his own pocket. He paid for people's medical bills, vacation costs, and living expenses. The total amount he is believed to have spent during his peak earning years runs into the hundreds of millions. The money was real. The spending was real. Whether the business managers were negligent is a separate question, and one the courts ultimately did not fully resolve in Depp's favor. The lawsuit was settled out of court in 2018. By the time his relationship with Heard ended and the legal battles began, Depp was carrying significant debt. He was also no longer receiving the major studio projects that had generated most of his income. Disney quietly removed him from the Pirates franchise following Heard's allegations. Warner Bros. Asked him to leave his role as Gellert Grindelwald in the Fantastic Beasts series after he lost the UK libel case. In April 2022, the defamation trial between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard began in Fairfax County, Virginia. It was unusual for several reasons. It was filmed and broadcast live, which is not typical for civil cases. It ran for 6 weeks. It attracted more public attention than almost any other legal proceeding in recent memory. The social media response to the trial was heavily skewed in Depp's favor from the beginning. Supporters created memes, fan accounts, and videos. Heard's testimony was frequently mocked online. Depp's supporters gathered outside the courthouse. It became something closer to a cultural event than a legal proceeding. The core of the case was Heard's 2018 op-ed in the Washington Post, in which she described herself as a public figure who represented domestic abuse survivors. She did not name Depp in the article. Depp argued the implication was clear and that the article caused him direct financial damage, specifically citing the loss of the Pirates of the Caribbean role. The jury sided with Depp on the main claims and awarded him $10 million in compensatory damages and $5 million in punitive damages. The punitive amount was later reduced to $350,000 by the judge to comply with state law. Heard was awarded $2 million on a counterclaim. The trial produced a large amount of evidence. Recorded audio captured Depp admitting to damaging cabinets in a kitchen, capturing moments where both he and Heard were aggressive in their communication, and instances where Heard appeared to mock Depp for speaking about seeking help. Photographs showed injuries on both sides at different points. Witness testimony was contradictory, depending on which side called the witness. The broader public took the verdict as a full exoneration of Depp. Legally, it was more specific than that. A jury found that a particular op-ed had been written with actual malice and had caused reputational and financial harm. It did not address the full history of the relationship or declare definitively what happened in every incident either party had described. One of the clearest ways to understand what went wrong in Johnny Depp's life is to look at the consistent things people close to him said, not in gossip columns, but under oath or in documented statements. His business managers said he was warned about his spending repeatedly and did not change his behavior. His former agent said he became difficult to work with as the legal troubles mounted. Members of his security team testified in the 2022 trial, with some supporting his account of events and others describing a more complicated picture. His children have stayed largely out of the public conversation. Lily Rose Depp, who became an actress herself, did not publicly take sides during the trials. She continued working. Jack Depp has maintained an even lower profile. People who worked with him on film sets over the years gave generally positive accounts of his professionalism on set, at least in his earlier career. Later in his career, after the Pirates franchise became his dominant work, there were more reports of late arrivals, difficulty with lines, and an increasing reliance on earpieces to feed him dialogue on set. Vanessa Paradis wrote a letter in support of Depp during the UK trial, saying he had never been violent with her or their children during their time together. Winona Ryder made similar statements. Both women's statements were presented as character evidence. What the people around him consistently described was a man of real warmth and generosity who had a serious substance problem that went unaddressed for decades, who was surrounded by people who depended on him financially and therefore rarely confronted him about his behavior, and who seemed to have little sustained support system built around his actual well-being rather than his productivity and earning capacity. Johnny Depp is now in his early 60s. After the 2022 trial, he returned to work. He directed and starred in a film about the painter Modigliani called Modi, which was released in 2024. He has continued performing with his band, the Hollywood Vampires. He has appeared at various public events and received standing ovations at film festivals in Europe. The American film industry has been slower to bring him back. Major studio projects have not materialized in the way many of his supporters expected after the trial verdict. The industry's hesitation reflects something the viral support for Depp during the trial did not fully account for: that a civil verdict about a specific op-ed does not necessarily resolve every concern a studio, insurer, or producer might have about hearing someone at the center of years of documented instability. His reputation internationally, particularly in France and the UK, remained largely intact throughout the legal period. He was awarded the honorary Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival in 2023, which generated significant attention. French audiences gave him extended applause. The question that does not have a clean answer is what his life actually cost him, not financially, though the financial losses were real, but in terms of the years spent in legal battles, the public exposure of private pain, and the relationships that did not survive. He was married once, had one long-term partnership, had one shorter marriage that became extraordinarily public, and has spent much of the last decade in courtrooms. He has said in interviews that he feels the truth has been established. Many of his supporters agree. Others look at the totality of the evidence and see a more complicated story, one where a person with real talent and real struggles spent decades making choices that amplified the damage his early life had already set in motion. What is clear is that the story of Johnny Depp is not simply one of a great talent brought down by outside forces. It is the story of a person who had access to significant help and resources for a long time, who was often surrounded by people who cared about him, and who still struggled to stabilize his life. That does not make him a villain. It makes him a human being whose problems were eventually too large and too public to manage privately.